People look at the sport of track and field and they'll hear about, doping case, and they'll think either the whole sport is like that, which isn't true, or, that was just one or two cases and it's, not really that bad. And that's somewhere in between those two, if I had to guess.
This is Running for Real, the podcast for runners who know that for every runner's high, there are just as many lows. All those just missed PRs, easy runs that feel hard, injury blues, and more. Each week, we'll talk to running, health, and wellness experts about their highs, lows, and best advice to build our confidence. Running for Real is about being honest, being brave, and most of all, not feeling alone. And now here's our host, Tina Muir.
Hello, my friends. Welcome to episode 169 of the Running For Real podcast. Thank you so much for being here. If you are a first-time listener, welcome. I hope you will enjoy it. And if you are a long-time listener, I truly appreciate you. And thank you so much for joining us going into 2020, which is, an exciting year. We're all kind of starting this year off fresh, thinking about things that are going to happen this year. And my guest today definitely has something on her mind that she's thinking about this year, as are many people, because this is an Olympic year. So exciting. Before I get on to any more about her, I want to tell you about last week. Did you hear me fangirl, just word vomit all over Michael Gervais last week? And hopefully you saw that I had good reason to, because he is an amazing sports psychologist. He is my favorite performance psychologist, and I just love the man so much. I think he is just one of the greatest minds out there, and I really hope you enjoyed that. That was such a big honor for me to talk to him. And be sure, by the way, he is doing a giveaway so that one of the Running For Real listeners, one of you, will get a Compete to Create course, his course, which is worth $500 for free. If you go to tinamuir.com/giveaway, you can enter to win. And I really hope one of you will come back to me telling me how much it means to you. And do remember, you can also get $50 off if you do use code Finding Mastery at competetocreate.net. If you just don't want to wait for the giveaway, if you feel like you're never a lucky person, you can always go get that $50 off Finding Mastery. He has brought in that code again just for my listeners, so make the most of it. All right, so today we have Molly Huddle on the show, arguably one of the definite female runners who are fighting for a spot on the Olympic marathon team next month. I'm really excited about her, what she's got going on. She's also very vulnerable in this episode today. She talks about a few things that she's been through and how she's overcome them. She talked about projects that she's been working on, why she's been speaking her mind and talking more about the things that don't feel right to her, which, we've seen a lot of that from other runners in the running industry this year, but it's been really nice to see it from Molly as well. And I really have looked up to her for what she's been able to do with that. I really think you are going to enjoy getting to know her a bit more if you haven't already kind of followed her and got to know her. And she also will talk about her podcast. She has launched a podcast with Alicia Montano and Ro McGettigan, which you will hear a lot about in this episode. So before we get to that, I just want to take a moment to thank our sponsors, because without sponsors, this would be really hard for me to financially just keep going and keep maintaining it as I do. So thank you so much for the sponsors. Thank you to any of you who have purchased a product that I have recommended. I vet these companies heavily, so they really do mean a lot to me, the companies. And, I've loved hearing how you've enjoyed them. So thank you to Recoup, Vital Farms, and Janji. Let's hear from one of them and then get to the episode. Thank you to Recoup for sponsoring this episode of the Running For Real podcast. Now, you heard me talking about Recoup just a few weeks ago, and there is a reason I have brought on this company. As you know, I really try hard to select companies that I think will actually be beneficial to you. And when it comes to recovery products, I am very selective, because I know there's so much out there. And as you are going to hear from Jay DeSherry in about a month's time, maybe a little bit less, you will hear that, a lot of it is something that we don't necessarily need. However, this is a product, what Recoup makes here, I wish I had had in college. There's so many opportunities, so many times I think this would have saved me. And I'm really excited to bring it to you because yes, we need to work on our weaknesses. Yes, we need to go to physical therapists and we need to do things for rehab. But there is also comes a point when you have a race coming up and, it's 2 weeks to go, something is really bothering you and you either have a choice, you either try and go through, which I have done many a time, or you decide to kind of pull the plug there. And pulling the plug is really hard to do, especially if you know that there is something that can get you to the line, get you through your race, and then you can take a rest and figure out what is going on. So I want to tell you about the Cryosphere and the Cryo Sleeve, which are from Recoup Fitness. And they are these cold sleeves that stay cold for 6 hours. The Cryosphere stays cold for 6 hours, which gives you relief on the go. It's essentially an ice cup replacement, which means it's mess-free, it's easily cleanable, time-saving. It's a sphere that comes out of the handle, so you can also use it for like plantar fasciitis or feet issues on the bottom of your feet. It is really just a wonderful product and something. It could have saved my shins so many times during my collegiate and early professional career. There's also the Cryo Sleeve, which combines ice and compression for 1 hour of cold portable relief, which would have come in handy many a time as well. It's great for reducing inflammation, speeding up recovery, pain relief, and, you know, just a wonderful product to use. They're also working on hot and cold sleeves for the ankle and shoulder in 2020, which is very exciting. But I really just feel like this product is a great idea because of the portability, because of the, you know, how much you can reuse it. You can not have to worry about the mess and the faff of finding ice cups. And it's just really good for when you're on the go, which when we are going towards races or just in life in general, we are often on the go right now. So if you use code Tina Muir at recoupfitness.com, you can get 15% off your order. That's Recoup Fitness, RECOUP fitness.com, and use code Tina Muir. You will get 15% off. Molly, thank you so much for joining me today on the Running For Real podcast. I'm not sure if I've had you on this podcast. I was trying to think about it, but I think I had you on my previous, on the Run to the Top podcast, but I don't think you've been on this one. So welcome to the show, or if I somehow missed it, welcome back. But thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, thanks, Tina. I'm glad to be talking with you.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. And I look forward to talking later on about you have actually launched your own podcast along with Roe McGettigan Dumas, that's her last name, right? And Alicia Montano. And I'm looking forward to hearing about that because, you know, podcasts are definitely the thing this year and people are loving your podcast. Definitely. I've heard a lot of people saying it. So I'm looking forward to getting into that. But for most people, they know of you as, you know, the speedy runner, someone who has just been kind of right at the front of long distance running for many years now. And we are, you know, not just over a month away from the Olympic trials. As you mentioned, as of this recording, the trials are just over, well, about 6 weeks away, or maybe 5. And the Houston half will maybe be when this is coming out. So tell us about kind of your plans for the year, what you're thinking with, you know, you said you might be racing Houston half when this is coming out, but what do you have going on in this Olympic year?
Yeah, 2020 is a big year. This is my first attempt at making the marathon team. I've made the 5K team and the 10K team, and this is totally different for me. It definitely feels like crunch time, which has been difficult because it coincides with the holidays, whereas usually I'm used to doing base work now. And in the summer is when I'm really, you know, getting ready and peaking for an Olympic trials or World Championship trials. So this has been new. I dealt with a little bit of a ankle injury a couple weeks ago. So I feel like there's still a lot of time, but it's definitely a different buildup than some of my other ones have been. So yeah, I'm looking forward to just kind of getting some really good work in the next few months. And Houston half, I think, will be a good chance to just, you know, it won't be a record attempt, but it'll be a great marathon prep effort.
And how has this been different to training for the 5K, 10K Olympics as you had in the past? How long has the build up been? Have you been, I mean, obviously you've been focusing more on like strength and endurance stuff rather than so much on the speed, but how has this kind of training cycle compared for you in previous ones?
Yeah, it's been different. Obviously, I came off of a track season, so that pattern is similar. A lot of my best buildups have been off of either a half marathon or a 10K, being really fit. But this one, I felt a little more beat up at the end of the year this year. And I tried to end the year with a fast half marathon that in retrospect, I probably should have just taken the break and gotten gotten slowly back into marathon training instead of I basically cut my break down by a month to try and fit in another effort. So
was that totally your choice, or was that kind of coach was like, oh, I don't know, and you were like, no, I really want to do it, or what?
Yeah, that's usually the way it goes. I was a little light on races this year, so I wanted to do another race, but it was probably one of those examples of like not really listening to my body and just kind of. I was fit, but I probably wasn't as fresh as I should have been to do something like that. So that kind of made this build up a little delayed, the start of this build up. But other than that, things are going pretty normal. We're definitely doing more strength stuff and less speed stuff, which is it's just the part of the marathon that I struggle with. But usually by the end of the build up, I come around with it. So that's kind of where we're at right now.
And so just overall, you'd say it's one of those things where it's maybe been a little bit less enjoyable during the actual training part. But, you know, when things start to come together towards the end, you'll see more of that difference. Whereas with the 5K, 10K, you can kind of feel it coming as you're going along. Is that kind of what you're saying?
That's a good way to describe it. It's like those workouts on the track, you just feel like you're touching race pace and getting more volume in than your race distance. So it's just easier to get an idea of where you're at and that confidence. Whereas the marathon, you're tired, you're doing a lot of training. Some of it goes well, some of it doesn't. And then when you're tapering, you kind of realize where you're at. So, which is like, basically you can't do anything at that point. You're where you're at 2 weeks before a race. So the marathon's always a little bit, it just requires a lot of faith that
it messes with your head for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think everyone listening can relate to that, because it's just that thing of being, 6, 8, especially more than that, 12 weeks out. And, you can hold what you hope to be your pace for, 5, maybe 10 miles. And you're thinking, how am I ever going to add on 16 or however many miles to this? So I think everyone can relate to that, because it is just, it messes with your brain. But, as we've seen time and time again, it does come together when it matters. And, you mentioned about kind of doing that race when you felt like, maybe in your heart, you shouldn't. Now, for those listening who, have no experience of being an elite or at that level, having sponsors, having people kind of wanting to see your name and results, is it quite difficult to kind of listen to your body sometimes, almost like feeling like people are expecting things of you, and people are, because you are in that limelight thinking, where's Molly been? It's been 3 months since she's raced. Or do you struggle with that pressure, and how do you kind of forgive yourself for things like that?
Yeah, I'd say I don't really struggle with the worry that someone will be looking for my name in the results. More so, I'm just used to racing a lot. And I feel like because that's become something, like people know that I race pretty often and at a high level pretty often, it doesn't really afford me the ability to like quietly disappear for a few months because I have been racing so often for so many years. So I guess I just feel like that's kind of the norm. But as I get older, I think it's important to like choose my races more wisely, and especially with the marathon, I'd say that's the biggest difference. You really just can't bounce right back from a marathon and do like a regular season on the road or a regular track season. And it's just an event that takes more time to train for and to recover from. So I'm just going to have to, like, if that's where I'm going to focus my energy the next year or two, that's where, like, that's just how the year is going to change for me. I think it's just going to be less racing, which is like expected. I think everyone knows that. For me, it was like, oh, I race like once or twice a month all year. That's just what I do. I go away and train for a few months in the winter. But other than that, like, summer is time to, like, for the fun part, like getting a lot of races in. And that's just been the change with the marathon.
Absolutely. And then how did you forgive yourself for, you mentioned about having an ankle issue and kind of seeing that as a correlation with maybe you shouldn't have done that race. How did you kind of let that go rather than being like, oh, Molly, what are you doing? Like, why did you do that?
Yeah, well, there's a little bit of that for sure. But I think just, I don't know, like just going forward, learning to listen more. It was kind of like I knew, like I was like, I'm fine. There's no like concrete injury holding me back. There's no concrete like lack of fitness. Like let's just get one more race in at the end of the year. It could be great. Who knows? And I think I was just like learning to, I think I wanted it to go well, but like in my gut, I was like, like there's a few little factors that, like you should know you need to be going in one direction that are going in another direction as far as like your form and like some other things with the race. I had to travel quite a bit and it was a lot of things. So I was just like, next time, just like let it go. Like, I don't know why I felt like I had to just, I feel like I like to just, I just always have hope that it's going to go well. And it's like, you get one or two real bad ones and you're like, you know what, if the signs are there, just listen to them.
Yeah. Well, I the reason I'm not trying to hammer that home to keep reminding you of it, but like, I think so many people listening will resonate with that because we hear it time and time again. I constantly within my community, I'm seeing that people saying, this flared up or that flared up. I knew in my gut that I shouldn't have done it, but I couldn't help myself. So I think it's nice for people to hear that they're not like stupid for doing things like that. Like every one of us does that thing. And we've all done it where we've kind of, seen the signs and thought, no, it'll be fine. And so thank you for sharing that and being honest and open about that. Like I really think that shows courage and strength to be able to, admit you did do things, but also to learn to forgive yourself and say, you know what, next time I'm going to do better. So, and looking forward to the marathon trials, this field this year, even as a British person looking from the outside, is this kind of, when you envisioned kind of saying you were going to go for the marathon trials, did you expect the field to kind of be as stacked as it was? Or is this kind of taken all of you at the top aback a bit that there's so many women who are kind of right up there who could grab a spot?
Yeah, I think there's been some improvements in like women like Sarah Hall and Steph Rothstein and Alphine Tillamook and Kellen Taylor. Like there's a lot of women who set really big PRs. Emma Bates and Emily Sisson, who I knew would be a good marathoner. Mm-hmm. Like we all know who the top 3 women have been the last few years, but I think it has been a surprising surge in the depth and like a lot of PRs have been happening the last year. So it's definitely become a really hard team to make. I mean, they're always hard teams to make, but this one in particular has been you just really know you have to be ready for it. And especially after taking a tour of the course, that won't afford you any grace periods either. It's a tough course. You really have to be healthy and ready and fit, I think, to make it through the course in that top 3 spot. So it's definitely become just a really intense, build up. So I think everyone's just trying to like put blinders on and do what they can do and see where you end up on race day.
And what do you do, someone like you training for this race where the competitions are going to be stiff, everyone has their own strengths and weaknesses and ways they're going to run this. And, there's a very good chance it could be tactical in some way because of the challenging course. What are some things that you as an elite can do to prepare yourself for kind of the challenge of competing against others?
I mean, I'm trying to take confidence in my history of like running really well against an all-American field, but it is the marathon. And I think what's important for me going into it is just going to be showing up healthy and like with my like form optimized, that tends to break down for me in a marathon. I just have these weak areas in my form. So I think just focusing on myself and like trying to get everything really like fortified and ready to handle the course and the turns and the hills. And hopefully if I can just show up as my normal self, like that will give me a lot of confidence. And that's just what we're trying to do.
Yeah. When you naturally have that kind of smart racer in you that you can kind of read races from what I've seen of you, that you can read races and kind of know, okay, this is happening. I need to do this, or like read the signs of what's coming to know what you should do to kind of respond to that from your track background. So that should kind of help you going into this, which is exciting. And, why do the marathon this time? Is it you wanted to do something different, or why step away from 5K, 10K, something that you've been very successful in the past, to go to the marathon this time?
Yeah, I think I do just want to try and do something different. I've been trying to explore the marathon more the last 3 years. And I just think it's something that goes well later in a career because there's a little less intensity. And, a lot of women have been winning majors and medals at age 37, 39, 40. Like we see it really quite often. So I think that's just kind of where I'm hoping kind of to extend my career with it, even though the training is pretty brutal. So it actually requires more work to stay healthy. But I think because you don't need that sharpness of speed, and you have to be pretty fast at the world level in the 5K and 10K, and running. I don't know that like I could get much faster than I was. So the marathon just seemed like this new challenge and new opportunity.
That's exciting. And for you as, one of these athletes going for a spot on the Olympics, just for someone listening who is wondering, like, what else does go into your running? Obviously you will have your runs, you're going to have the strength-based things, you're going to have some of the faster things, you're going to have long runs, but tell us about some of the other things that go into it. Do you do strength training? Do you do stretching, mobility? What other things go into training for to make the Olympic team?
Yeah, there's a lot of body work. Like I'll spend usually 2 appointments a week or more at the chiropractor that I see, Dr. John Ball down here in Phoenix. He's just really great at managing like a lot of the overuse injuries that come from like marathon type training. It's a lot of the same stuff for runners. He's noticed same areas tend to get weak and overused. So that takes up quite a few hours.
So is that just every week, regardless of even if anything's going on, you just go there every week?
Yeah, usually, there's almost always something going on. So, and that's not to mean injuries, but just like you can always be like more efficient and like there's always something you can be optimizing as far as the body stuff. So that's kind of the level that we're at. Always trying to look for that improvement there. And then of course there's the actual training, which just takes longer when you're doing more mileage, and you can't really skip the pre-run warm-up stuff as far as like hurdle. There's some hurdle drills for hip mobility, a lot of sort of foot mobilizing stuff, and it doesn't take too long. Maybe
is that
15.
Every day before the run, or just workouts and long runs?
I try and do it before each run, so I'll do it twice a day. But it's like 10 or 15 minutes, just some activations and loosening some things up, and then I do strength, like gym work on workout days. Usually I'm out of the gym in like 45 minutes. It's not too long, but you also like, it just all adds up, and then you're a little more tired when you're doing the longer training. So you kind of have to get extra hour. You can't really wake up and go at 6 a.m. Like I just need extra sleep. So the day gets started kind of late sometimes. Don't get out the door till 10 or so. And then you don't finish with your training by 1, and then it's time to go again at 5. So the days just really fill up, even though you're like, what did I even do today?
Thank you to Vital Farms for sponsoring this episode of the Running For Real podcast. Friends, I could not be more excited to be working with Vital Farms. I've been a big fan of their products for many years. I have been having their eggs for many years and enjoying the fact that I can go into a grocery store in most places around the US and find Vital Farms in there, but know that they really do care about their products. They care about what it goes into them, and they care about the animals that they are coming from. So I'm excited to tell you today about the Vital Farms ghee that has now come out. So just for those of you who don't know, ghee is a class of clarified butter. It originated in ancient India, and Vital Farms has been making pasture-raised butter for many years. And then they believe that great ghee starts with better butter, which makes sense, right? And that all starts with the cow. As I mentioned, they do look after their animals. They have pasture-raised cows that are raised to graze on actual pastures, the ones that cows should be grazing on. Vital Farms ghee is a clean and versatile butter oil for every culinary need. It is made by cooking down butter to remove the water and milk solids, which means it's lactose-free and casein-free, which is good for those of you who need to keep that in mind. Now, I have been using ghee for many years in my cooking, and it's a really great alternative to using butter, and it's just a really flavorful product to use. And I love that Vital Farms are now coming out with this. It also has a great high smoke point, so it doesn't burn, it doesn't chemically alter at high heat. So it's great for frying, great for sauteing. It can be delicious even on toast, in coffee, if you are into the into the butter in coffee. Definitely have not given that a try myself. I'm still a bit scared of it, but those of you who love it will already love and know that. Or you can also have it drizzled on popcorn. That is a big pregnancy craving of mine for sure. Now, you shouldn't have to sacrifice quality for convenience, and that's why Vital Farms is the first ever ghee made in a squeeze bottle. So there's the complex goodness of ghee, nice and easy for you to use. Now, you can look out for Vital Farms ghee in a Whole Foods market in the original and Himalayan pink salt flavors. And you can also visit vitalfarms.com/ghee. That's vitalfarms.com/GHEE for a chance to win, wait for this, a year's supply of Vital Farms ghee for free. Go to vitalfarms.com/GHEE to get yourself some. Vital Farms is a brand I trust, and I hope you love them too.
Usually I'm out of the gym in like 45 minutes. It's not too long, but you also it just all adds up, and then you're a little more tired when you're doing the longer training. So you kind of have to get extra hour. You can't really wake up and go at 6 a.m. Like, I just need extra sleep. So the day gets started kind of late sometimes. Don't get out the door till 10 or so. And then you don't finish with your training by 1. And then it's time to go again at 5. So the days just really fill up, even though you're like, what did I even do today?
Well, you're working towards your dreams.
Yeah, you want every run to feel good. That's kind of been my goal for this build up, is like have every run go well. To try not to have any of those runs where they're just like slogs or you're limping or anything like that. And that takes, preparation, even if it's just a mileage day.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned there about doing the strength training on your workout days. Now, I've had a lot of conversations with my audience about, I never could do that. I just felt like I couldn't keep my form right in the gym doing that. But I've always said, it has to be up to the person which day you do it. So tell us your reasoning behind why you do your strength days on the days that you do your workouts as well.
Yeah, I really like doing that. I used to do strength days in between, and I would get too sore, and it would affect, I still get sore, but at least now it's all condensed into one workout day. So that's what I like about it. And I don't really go that heavy in the gym. It's a lot of more like form correcting stuff and focusing on my weaknesses. So I'm not really afraid that I'll like lose my form or get hurt in the gym, because I just don't do anything that intense in there. But it still makes a really big difference. It's still important gym work. I still get sore from it. And for me, the key is to get in there. Like, we have a home gym in our garage, and I just get in and out right away after the workout before I have time to get tired. It's like a continuation. It's like the cool down. Like, I grab a recovery drink or recovery bar, go right into the gym, and then be done before I get too tired. So
that makes sense. And like you said, you get it all out the way. So maybe the next day is you're extra tired and you have one really bad day, but then the following day is okay, rather than kind of stringing it out for 2 days. And I just want to clarify for anyone listening, like, there is no right or wrong way to do this. It really does come down to personal preference, which days you want to strength train. And you just have to try it out for you and see what works with your schedule. I know for many of you listening, if you have a full-time job, doing a 2-hour workout and then going into the gym for an hour may not work, or it may work better if you have specific days that you have more time. So really make it work for you. Don't, do what other people are doing. Try it out yourself. I just wanted to clarify that, because I get so many people asking, and I knew when you said about doing it on your workout days, people would be like, what? So I wanted to ask you about that. Okay, so you've been working with Saucony for many years, and they've supported you through a lot. They've obviously grown with you. You've been a big part of the brand, and it's really been kind of cool for me to see how far you've come with them. But you going into this marathon trials, seeing all this hype about the Nike Vaporflies, the Next Percents. Does any part of you kind of worry about that, or you and maybe other people like Des, who's in Brooks, or, all the Hoka athletes like Steph and Kellen and Alafine? Does any part of you kind of think like, God, I hope that doesn't make the difference between, the team and not? Like, how do you kind of let that go in your heart when these shoes are around and they're not being stopped as of right now?
Yeah, it's definitely been tough with the footwear stuff, because it just feels like the shoes are just they're just doing too much. Like it's like just become so much of the story. And especially with the Alpha Fly coming out, like there's worries that there won't be any regulation on what they can do to a shoe. Like I know innovation is important, and Saucony is an innovative brand, and they have come out with their own Endorphin Pro series, which is a carbon plate shoe with stacked foam. And it's a good shoe, but like, where does it go from there? And
so would you rather them not have come up, rather none of them be able to use a carbon plate?
Not so much the carbon plate. I just think there needs to be regulations on like how much can your shoe give back to you as far as energy, because I think certainly we know like springs and stuff aren't allowed, but then there's other ways you can get energy return. And so I think like, what is the limit on that? I mean, even rubber or foam will give you an energy return compared to a bare foot. So I don't want to say like you need to wear ballet slippers on the marathon course, but like I think it's getting a little bit, it's just needing definition. Like it's a rule we didn't think we would need, that I think now we do need some guidelines, whereas currently there aren't really. So I actually did see today World Athletics is coming up with some kind of stack height guideline or something in response to like some of the next generation of shoes coming out, like the Alpha Fly, I guess. So, I mean, that's a little, I don't know what will come of it and what direction they're going, but I guess that's comforting to know it won't be like just this unforeseen, like surprise shoe that will show up at certain races. And yeah, it's definitely, it's hard because it seems like, for example, with Nike, they've had this shoe in development for so many years, and people are kind of scrambling at the other companies to catch up to what was years of, really good, like lab work. Like they have quite a team over there. So it's hard to catch up so quickly, but it is something that, you do want shoes to be, the shoe companies, of course, want the shoes to be ever improving. And I just think you want it to be in the spirit of the original rules, and you don't want it to ever like eclipse like the story of the athletes achieving something, or you don't want the team to be like just like debated and questioned afterwards for something like the Olympic trials, for example, or even then the podium spots at the marathon or the majors.
Yeah, for sure. Because I mean, if like it was to be the case where there would be 1, 2, 3 on each side of Nike athletes, I mean, it would be quite, like you said, the athletes going into that race, it would be kind of, that would be the conversation, wouldn't it? All about the shoes. They're all wearing the shoes rather than talking about what even with them having worked as hard as they wouldn't even get the recognition they deserve either, because it would just be about the shoes. So yeah, I see what you're saying. And, it is kind of a bit of a weird time. So it's going to be interesting moving forward to see what does happen and, how things change. So hopefully we do get an answer sometime soon, and we can figure out a way forward from there. Now, in addition to kind of speaking out about that, you have I said to you before the podcast that my interactions with you had always been you're very like quiet and introverted, and, but you've recently been really kind of speaking out about things that are important to you, which is wonderful. And, we know there's been a lot of that in the running world lately, especially from women who have been gathering the strength to kind of speak out. But why now? Why have you got the confidence now? Is it because of these other runners to say your thoughts and to kind of speak out when something to you feels really wrong?
Yeah, well, I think that's just the point. If it's something to you feels like it needs to be said, I think I just personally have less concern now over, that's like, I should wait until someone asks me about that, or I should like wait for this time to say, wait till I'm done running. Like, I don't want to be a distraction, or I don't want to, I'll let my feet do the talking. Like that's just the way that like a lot of my environment is, that the people around me just believe in that. And I believe in that, but also like, I'm at the point in my career where I just feel like you want to do more with where you are in the sport. And that's not to say you want to step away from performance. It's just, you just feel like you have more platform and you want to do something with it. And so there's just been less waiting for someone to give me a chance to say something and just trying to make my own chances to say what I want. So I think it's definitely been the last year or so, you've definitely seen more women athletes doing that. And I think that has maybe sunk in and just been a little more empowering, but also just highlighting like what more of what needs to be said and what things that need to be pushed a little bit. So kind of giving me the areas that I want to get involved in are they're just being presented to me more. So yeah, it's just kind of taken off from there. But I think, like I am pretty introverted, I would say, but hopefully that shows that you don't have to be like an outspoken person to kind of say something or change something or have an impact, I guess.
Yeah. No, I think that's so good to mention. And Cara said the same thing, that just because you're an introvert doesn't mean if it's something that's really important to you, you can find that strength to speak up and say, no, I don't agree with that. This is not right, or whatever it may be. So thank you for being able to do that. And for you, it's, a lot of doping, just kind of the rules and the structure that's there right now isn't really doing its job, essentially. So for those listening who are thinking, who, they've never been at the elite level, maybe new into the sport and really new to understanding this, what is the impact to you? Why is it such a big deal to kind of keep this doping conversation going, to make the sport quote unquote fair by taking out these people who are, essentially cheating? Tell us about, how does it impact you and your running and your training and your mentality and everything about what you're doing, knowing that there's still people out there who are, in a gray area or even just straight in a red area?
Yeah, I think there's kind of, people look at this sport of track and field and they'll hear about the odd doping case and they'll think one of two things: either the whole sport is like that, which isn't true, or they'll think, oh, that was just one or two cases and it's, not really that bad. And that's somewhere in between those two, if I had to guess. So it really does affect the athletes the most, obviously. And it's kind of strange that we get the most blowback from talking about it, because it directly affects the clean athletes, like financial and career advancement in this sport. So I guess I just feel like, I don't know. There've been a lot of times I've walked off the track at a world championship and the interviewer has asked me why the US is so terrible at the 5K. And I'm just like, okay, well, there's things I can't say and things I can say. And obviously you don't look at results with like much nuance, but I can't run a 60 in the middle of a race. That's why. So there's just little things like that where you're like, knowing that the problem is like, maybe not, you're just not being as protected as you hoped you'd be as a clean athlete. And it just, I've never had the same experience as someone like Alicia or my other co-host for our podcast, Roisin, where they've had medal upgrades due to doping violations from Russian athletes. But I do know the problem exists, and against women I've run against at the world level. And I just feel like there needs to be more done, and hopefully strides are being made towards that. But it's like, while you're competing, it's hard to focus all your time and energy on like the things like in the day, like we were talking about earlier, that actually help you improve at running. And you have such a close, you're just so up close to like the daily details of trying to become better at your sport, that like you don't exactly have the bandwidth to be like fighting a global doping problem at the same time. But you feel like if you aren't trying to ask what's going on, or maybe like push the issue, that like it's not being dealt with in the clean athlete's best interest. So it's kind of this balance of like, you don't want it to become a distraction, but I think a lot of clean athletes are realizing they kind of need to talk more about it and just try and help move things along as best they can with the limited resources they have. So
have you ever had a position where you've finished maybe, I don't know, fourth in something, or, not where you thought you would, and thought, oh, what's the point? Like you maybe suspect some people, or you just get this like sixth sense that something isn't right, and you think, oh, like, why do I even try? Have you ever reached a point like that after a race, or even in training, and thought, if they're just going to sidestep me, I'm never gonna be able to do it?
I've had races like that, and like it's hard. You can't really ever, like, unless you're really close. Yeah, you can't. I've always operated from a place of like, I'm just going to do the best I can in the climate I'm in, and it'll push me to new levels, against myself. But like, unfortunately, I can't like make a zero-sum game of like medal or nothing, because then I would last not very long in the sport. But you see people getting medals, clean athletes getting medals, and more now, and you start to think like, okay, maybe I can do it. Like if I see, Emma Coburn winning a world championship, like it's possible, and Jenny Simpson and women like that. So, yeah, but I've definitely had moments where I'm just like, what? Like I remember before the Rio Olympics, I had done this track workout, and it was like actually a very good workout. And I remember it just being like having these weird benchmarks I made for myself in my head. And I was like, well, if I want to try and medal in Rio, I have to be here, and I'm here, and like I have to do this, and like I know someone who's done this workout, and it's just not lining up, and I'm running out of time. And I remember my coach just being, he like walked off the track, like I think he was just like, "What are you?
Yeah,
like where is your mind going right now?" And it was just one of those moments where it just felt really like insurmountable, and it was in the end. But but it doesn't mean that like it wasn't worth doing. It's just, that is kind of a strange spot to be in. Like there's just a lot of questioning involved, like a lot of like, I don't know. I've heard Alicia talk about it before, where she says like, oh, if I really knew I was fourth and that was just the best I could be, like I'd be okay with it. And I think a lot of people feel that way. Yeah. It's like you just want to know where you really stand, and it's the question mark that really gets you. Yeah, so it's caused a lot of athletes to like train themselves into oblivion too, just trying to hit a benchmark that isn't actually possible. So it's just damaging in a lot of ways.
Yeah. No, I could definitely imagine that being the case. And it's something that, we're obviously thinking about a lot. But what would you say to anyone listening who is a spectator and, thinking about watching the Olympics in the summer and kind of is in that mindset now of watching, let's say, the Olympics in the summer, where every race that's won or every performance that's impressive, it's like, well, they're dirty. Like, what would you like to say about, you've said there's people like Emma and Jenny, and obviously you and many others who are clean, but reassuring people that it doesn't mean everyone who is winning something or everyone who is running a big personal best is kind of doing something like cheating in some way, but there are some healthy, just hardworking people who have just, gritted it out and worked their way to the top.
Yeah, there are a lot of athletes like that at the Olympic level. Unfortunately, one of the other downsides to doping is they don't get as much attention because they're usually finishing like further back. And track is already like such a circus. Like there's so many events and so many records and so many great performances that like really the media only covers the tip top superstars every year. And so, yeah, I would say maybe that's actually something that could make the sport more interesting to fans, is to just highlight stories, like a little more of a variety of stories, maybe from not necessarily the superstars and the podium finishers all the time, but try and reach back to some of those really good stories who are in, maybe 6th place, 7th place. I don't know. Those athletes are there, and not everyone who finishes on the podium is dirty. It's just the deck is kind of stacked against you as a clean athlete is what it is. And so I still have a lot of hope for the sport. Like I'll always watch, even when I'm done running, I'll be a fan of the sport. I'm not jaded. I definitely wouldn't want to help the sport if I thought it was a lost cause. And that's like why I want to try and eventually do something to help. Because I think there is a lot of hope, and there are a lot of great athletes. And I've just met so many, I've met and trained with so many great athletes who I'm just like Alicia and Roisin, for example. I'm just like, they're great role models. And there's more women like them. There's more athletes like them involved in the sport. And so it's really just like an inspiring place, and a lot of inspiring athletes are there.
Thank you to Janji for sponsoring this episode of the Running for Real podcast and for partnering up with me in 2020. I love this company so much over the last 6 months, or probably 8-10 months that I'd been wearing them, that I asked them if we could continue our relationship, because I feel so passionately, so strongly about this company and what they stand for. most companies are just kind of after their bottom line. Janji is really out there to kind of help the runner. They created the product that they felt was kind of missing and involving the features and the things that they loved and would like to see in running products. But the best part about it is they take their inspiration from people in various countries around the world. They go to visit these countries. They meet with local designers in countries like Mexico, Bolivia, Cambodia, Uganda. And they work with a local designer to create the design that kind of represents that country. They then take it back, put it into products, put it into their clothes and make it look like that style. And then they give 5% of profits back to clean water nonprofits within those countries. I just love that. A lot of their products are also made from recycled materials, which, as you know, I probably have talked about enough that I absolutely love that about them. And they just kind of care. They're really working to make the world a better place. And I've had the honor of getting to know both Dave and Mike, and they really are just such genuine, wonderful people. So I want to thank Janji for sponsoring this episode. You can get 10% off your order using code TINAMUIR, that's TINAMUIR, at janji.com. That's JANJI.com, JANJI.com. And you will get 10% off your order. Go get yourself some tights, go get yourself some long sleeves or a jacket or a hat, whatever it may be. You will absolutely love their products. I know I definitely do. And just love that you're giving 5% of your payment to clean water nonprofits in the country that the inspiration is coming from. Go check it out at janji.com.
I think there is a lot of hope, and there are a lot of great athletes. And I've just met so many, I've met and trained with so many great athletes who I'm just like Alicia and Roisin, for example. I'm just like, they're great role models. And there's more women like them. There's more athletes like them involved in the sport. And so it's really just like an inspiring place, and a lot of inspiring athletes are there.
So for a listener who is thinking, okay, but how do you know those people are clean? Like you say, there's these athletes and they're clean, but if someone is a bit skeptical listening and thinking, okay, but how do you know that these athletes that you've trained with, you don't know what they're doing in their bedroom? What, does there come some level of trust, or what would you say to someone listening who's just feeling a little bit skeptical right now?
Yeah, I can understand. I guess I would just say understand that it's like hard to really know what's real and what's not.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe as an elite athlete, it's easier to know kind of like what performances make sense and what don't, because you kind of know, you can relate that to workouts or paces you run yourself, or that, athletes you've run against have run, and you just pay attention to the sport much closer.
Yeah.
But I guess it would help us all have a bit more confidence. I think if maybe like the drug testing standards around the world were a little more even and a little more trustworthy and just a little more strict at weeding those athletes out, I think that would probably help. That would be something that I think could help people trust the sport and be more inspired by it.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned about kind of highlighting other people. And I think the US does a really good job of highlighting. I've noticed like making the Olympic trials, there's a lot of those kind of underground stories about like mum of 4, works 50 hours a week, scrapes in to the trials and now is going and is so excited. Or there's all kinds of like kind of underdog stories that go into kind of the Olympic trials, getting into it, or just kind of a bit further back. But you're right, at the top, it's really like medal or bust. And actually, I have to say, I do think in the UK it is better. Whenever I've watched BBC, when I've been at home watching the championships, they do, they show everyone on the start line. They talk about what this person has done, what they've overcome, especially, the kind of well-known stories. But whereas over here in the US, I really get frustrated because it just pins on the front and just the Americans as well. Like the BBC will also focus on, this American has, won this medal in the past. She's done this and she's overcome that. But I really think I don't know what the channel is over here, but I think they've got some work to do if they're going to kind of pull some more out of the sport than just being about the medals. So I think you're right that we can do some stuff there, but I'm not sure you or I have the power to change that. The TV.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. It's like NBC can decide who the Olympic stars are before the games start, because that's where they focus their attention on. And so I I think they try to predict what's going to happen and put the attention there on, if we have a lot of medals in volleyball, that's where all the coverage will be. And if we have a lot, and it's just like they miss a lot, I think, because of that. And it only comes around every 4 years. So 4 years later, the person's story that you missed, that rise at that Olympics, they might not even be at the next one. So I think definitely they could spread the coverage out a little better.
Okay, so let's talk about, speaking of coverage, let's talk about your coverage. You have started a podcast with, you mentioned Alicia and Ro a few times in the episode so far. Obviously, it's clear you've been spending some time with them before this, but you have started the Keeping Track podcast. I'm taking from what you said, it was your idea, but why start a podcast? Like, how did that kind of come up for you?
Yeah, it was kind of strange. I mean, Alicia, I think, was going to start a similar podcast anyway. And we just kind of at the same time, like, hooked up. And I brought Roisin into it too, because I was like, who's an interesting person who I love talking to? Roisin had some great insights on like the sports psychology side of things. And so I just thought it would be a cool mix of women to have. But yeah, Alicia and I were both just talking about how we'd like to just see the stories of more female athletes being told, and from our own experiences, even we were just like, yeah, we feel like we kind of, we wish we had this or that kind of exposure. And so this is kind of what we both kind of agreed on the way we want it to go. And Roisin is like such a track fan. She's like, oh, I've always wanted to do like a track radio show. Let's do it. So
for someone listening, tell us, like, what's the summary of what it is?
Well, we were inspired by just kind of trying to battle the statistic that only 4% of sports media coverage in the US is women's sports. And there actually is a lot more parity in like athletics, but that's the world that we're in. We're in track and field, and we'd like to interview some athletes outside of track and field as well. But right now that's where our connections are and our interest. And so, yeah, we just wanted to highlight those stories of entrepreneurs and athletes and coaches in the women's sports world. And we just think there's a lot of overlooked stories, even of amazing performances. Like, you just don't see enough podcasts with like the sprint and field event athletes from track and field, or at least none that I've come across. And, we wanted to talk about women's family lives, or their, maybe some of the challenges they faced in the sport outside of just the workouts, or, a lot of things that you cover in your podcast. And that's why I asked you for some advice when we were starting up, I remember. And I just think there can't be enough of those kind of outlets. And so it was something we could do while we're still doing our sports and our other, like, Roisin has her own job, and Alicia is training and has a family, and I'm training still at a high level. So we were like, it's something we can do right now, and it's really fun. And we hope, someone else, like, it has actually happened where, like, we talked, for example, Absi Baru, who we talked to after the CIM marathon. She ran very well, so she was going to get some people asking her for interviews and podcasts. But I think when we put her story out and she gets to tell it, other people are inspired, and more people will pick up that story. And eventually, hopefully, like, it will reach the same amount of eyeballs that like a higher profile athlete story would. And just kind of opening up more windows to like those inspiring stories and just uniquenesses in their stories that maybe people wouldn't have known otherwise. So that was kind of the goal. And that's kind of where we're going with it.
Yeah. And I definitely recommend giving it a listen. I've really been enjoying catching up with the episodes. I did tell Molly, like, right when she launched, that, I was going to check it out. And then my life just kind of I got so burned out on everything that I had to step back, but I'm finally can catch up, and I'm loving hearing the episodes. So definitely go check out the Keeping Track podcast. And we talked earlier about you having kind of, speaking out about things more. Do you find that doing the podcast kind of, doing it often and being in a place where you're not only talking to friends, but that you can make a difference because people are listening, and that will make them think, actually, that's right. Like, do you think that's been a part of your kind of confidence, and it's kind of allowed you to see that the world didn't explode because you said that, there needs to be some guidelines on Nike or whatever it may be, like actually saying things that maybe before you'd have been like, oh, I don't know if, I should say that. Has it given you some confidence?
I think a little bit, yeah. And just you feel a little bit safer when it's something of your own creation. Yeah. And so you're not just going to be used for like media fodder or like a hot clickbait top like headline or something like that. Like you're able to frame what you're saying with your own intentions. And all three of us have the intention of like just actually like uplifting other stories and putting spotlights on women in the name of like inspiration and furthering the sport. And we, that's kind of it. We're not trying to like make money or advance like our ratings or anything specifically. We just want that to be like a positive little spot in the sports world. So you definitely feel like when you're kind of in control of like that you're able to say things that people see that like that's the intention behind what you're saying on that kind of a platform. And it's great to have Alicia and Roisin too, because they're so well spoken, and Alicia is not afraid to say what she wants to say. Like she's very brave. Like I definitely, Ro and I are both inspired by her all the time.
Yeah. And also, I'm sure you have been told this, but like knowing my listeners so well, I know that for them, being able to feel like they're sitting in a conversation between you three is just so cool. And it's so nice that like you can just be yourself and chat with friends, but about serious topics, and other people can listen. Like, I know people just love that. So those of you listening, I know you're really going to enjoy this, particularly if you do enjoy kind of learning from those elite runners and thinking about the things that they're thinking about. So definitely check it out. What have you learned from them, from Alicia and Ro? You mentioned Alicia being very brave and, outspoken and saying what's on her mind. But what else have you learned from them? Getting to spend an hour a week with them most weeks.
Yeah, it's been fun. It's been tough scheduling just because we're all on different time zones. But yeah, just that like it's just such a fun collaboration, and it goes so well with like all of us, as opposed to like we've had to do an episode or two with just two of us, and we've done a few with just one-on-one. And the ones where it's all three of us, like we kind of feel like we're clamoring for questions, but then when we go back and listen to it, we're like, oh, like we all add our own thing. And Roisin's really insightful, and Alicia asks like the tough questions, and like it's just been cool to like appreciate their style and what they lend to it. And so I just think when you do any kind of project like that, it's just a good exercise in like, I don't know, appreciating how different perspectives and different people can kind of all lend to like some bigger, greater thing. Not that the podcast is like this big, great thing, but it makes it better when it's all three of us. So that's been fun to see and fun to experience. And they're funny to talk to. Like we really want to we haven't done a podcast yet where we're all in the same room. So that would be the next goal. I think that would be like very fun to do.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. We'll make it happen, and I'm sure you'll get plenty of people listen. And, just you mentioned there about learning from them and seeing different perspectives. I know Lauren Fleshman, when she came on the show a few months ago, she kind of talked about what she's been learning from Alicia about how different their lives were growing up, even though they went to the same high school. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yep. Even though they went to the same high school. And I think all of us are kind of opening up our minds now to realizing that our way isn't right. Our way isn't the only way. Like everyone has kind of a different viewpoint on things. And so that's really cool that you don't only get to learn from them, but us as listeners also get to kind of experience that and be a part of that. So thank you for taking that step on behalf of all of us. And one more thing I want to wrap up with here. You recently wrote an article for Runner's World about kind of taking time for yourself, how it's not selfish to kind of make time for your run, but it actually makes you a better person for your loved ones. Now, you kind of mentioned this early on with having to train through the holidays. You kind of inferred that, there's a lot more to think about. And that is true. Everyone knows during the holidays, there's events, there's things going on. But for people who are listening and they're thinking, I get that, it makes me a better person or whatever, but my family and my friends are saying like, oh God, do I have to wait another hour for you to be done with your run? Or like, it makes you feel like you're messing up everyone else's day and everyone has to live their lives around you. What would you say to that person who really struggles to maybe not just around the holidays, but all the time, make that time for themselves because they feel like they're inconveniencing everyone?
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely heard some comments from the article that are like, oh, like it's a little easy for you to say if you're a professional athlete. And, that is the caveat. Like, in a way, I think a lot of people relate to like everyone says, I don't have time to exercise or I don't have time for, this or that. But obviously I do have time. It's my job. It's different, but it is also like, I think it's just important to carve that piece of your day out, and within reason, obviously. Like maybe if it's not your job, it is a bit excessive to take like 3 hours to work out in a day. But like, I don't know, like if that's what keeps you sane, like I suppose that's better than just bottling everything up. And it's just, running is different things for a lot of people, but in addition to it just being good for your body, it's good for a lot of people's like mind, and just helps them sort through the rest of their day. And maybe if they have to sit in an office or sit with the kids all day, like getting that run in is going to help them be more able to do that. And so I think that's just what I meant when I said you have to kind of defend that chunk of time. And like I said, within reason, like if it's Christmas Day, like you don't want to make your kids wait too long to open presents or something like that. But
but for your kids, I mean, Christmas Day is one thing, but for your kids, you're also teaching them that it's important for you to look after yourself too, and not just give to everyone else, but to do things that make you happy. And I love the fact that when I put my running clothes on, Bailey's like, "Mommy going for a run?" Like she says it, and I come back and she's like, "Mommy been for a run?" And, I love that she kind of already registers. I don't even know if she knows, she knows what running is, but like, obviously doesn't understand what we're doing. But like, I love that she's learning that that's part of the day. That's like showering, that's like eating. So, I think,
imagine if you show her that like you make time to do that, then that's just normal to her. And one day if she wants to make time to run, she won't feel like, oh, I have to do this on someone else's schedule, or I have to fit this in when other people don't need me. It's just like, no, I need to do this now. And no guilt.
Yeah, thank you. And I will put a link to that in the show notes, so if anyone wants to take a read of that. Although, Molly, you did break the cardinal rule, which is never, ever, ever, ever read Runner's World comments. If you were talking about the comments section, that is a very dangerous place to be hanging out. I learned that the hard way a few years ago, but I hopefully you stay away.
Runner's World's pretty tame compared to other websites. I think
that's true. Yeah, definitely the case, and just runners in general seem to be a bit more calm than other places. But okay, so tell us, hopefully the Olympics this year, and if you don't make it in the marathon, would you try for the track as a second?
I would, I would try and come back for probably the 10K, which barring injury, like you should have time to do that. And so that would be a great another opportunity.
Okay. And then what about beyond that? Like, you've mentioned you want to be in the sport for more than just your physical ability, your performance in some way in the future. But what does beyond here look like for you?
I'm not sure. Like, I don't really ever plan to retire. I kind of like the idea of just always, racing in some capacity or training, like just doing it always for fun, if you're as much as your body allows. But I don't know what's beyond the actual shoe contract days. I would love to get involved in the sport in some level that is impactful, whether it's anti-doping or, I don't know, trying to do something with women's sports to advance them in other countries. I think that would be cool, but still just really focused on the race in front of me at the moment. And I'm not great at doing two things at once. So that's kind of what's been going on.
I think we're finding out now that that's actually a good thing, because we all think we can do multiple things at once. And the longer you think that you can do multiple things at once, the longer you're kind of not doing these multiple things at the level you could be doing them. So I think you're doing the right thing there. And just as a final thing here, you mentioned about being involved in women's sports. What is one thing you would like to tell the women out there listening about themselves, about running, and just about the future?
I think just that there's a lot of opportunities now that we didn't have, but there's still a ways to go. Like, you see things like the U.S. women's soccer team fighting for equal pay, and the big step Alicia and Allison and Kara took with the dream maternity stuff. So things are getting better than ever before, which is exciting. And hopefully as women, we take advantage of that and just really embrace sport for all the really encouraging things it can do, especially for female athletes. I think there's just a lot of body confidence you can take away from it, and, just leadership lessons that you can take away from it. And I think it can really just be a place for women to thrive and inspire as much as all our sports heroes in the past have done.
Yeah, no, I think that's so good. And you're definitely one of those people that I know many look up to, including myself. And tell people where they can find you, where they can follow you. We mentioned the Keeping Track podcast. Where else can people find you?
Yeah, I guess Instagram and Twitter at Molly Huddle. And I have a website, runmollyhuddle.com. Okay. And our website for the podcast is keepingtrack.com.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your vulnerability, for sharing with us, for doing what you're doing to make the sport a better place and continuing to grow things for women. So we appreciate you and wish you the best of luck for the races this year.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Tina.
My friends, if you have a minute and you could leave a review on your favorite podcast player, Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Stitcher, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Spotify, or whatever else podcast player you use to listen to this podcast, or if you would subscribe to this podcast, you will help me get out in front of new runners to make our tribe even bigger and even better. It might not seem like you as one person can make a difference, but really it helps a lot. And it shows me you appreciate the hard work I put in for those. Thank you so much. This is an exciting year, my friends. It is Olympic year, and we wish Molly all the luck in going next month to get herself one of the spots on the marathon team. I will be looking forward to following how she gets on. And if she doesn't somehow make it, then maybe we can watch her in her kind of backup or her second opportunity, as she called it, in the 10K. I really admired Molly for kind of speaking out about these things, these issues that are important to her while she is still kind of in the peak of her career. It's not always easy for athletes to do that, but I really think it is good that she's speaking up and kind of talking about things that, are important to her, because we all need that inspiration and we all should be doing it a bit more, kind of speaking up about the things that matter to us. You can find links to everything we talked about today in the show notes at tinamuir.com/episode 169. I just want to remind you that Michael Gervais Compete to Create, you can be one of the winners by going to tinamuir.com/giveaway. I say winners. Actually, technically that's wrong. One of you will get to be a winner of a Compete to Create course worth over $500. If you do not want to wait, you can go to competetocreate.net, use code FindingMastery to get $50 off. He had deactivated that code. He has reactivated it for us. I don't know how long he is going to keep that open for. So if you do not want to wait to see if you are the giveaway winner, you can just go ahead and get that $50 off. I just want to say a quick thank you to Recoup, Vital Farms, and Janji. Recoup, remember, that is the cryosphere, the cryo sleeve, to help you if you are struggling with an injury right now and you have maybe a big race coming up, or you want to just kind of hold yourself together to get through something. You can use code Tina Muir at recoupfitness.com. That's RECOUP fitness.com. Use code Tina Muir for 15% off. Vital Farms, go check out their ghee. It's so good for cooking. Absolutely recommend it. And thank you to them for supporting me and just being an awesome little company. And finally, to Janji, if you use code Tina Muir, you can get 10% off your order. You've heard me raving about their clothes, and all of you who have tried them have absolutely loved them too. So thank you so much to all three of those. I'll see you next week, my friends.
Thanks for listening to the Running for Real podcast. Be sure to check out tinamuir.com for show notes and even more helpful running information.